Howdy doody, everyone. It's time for part 2 of daily number 416, where we learn to be a better gamer. Thus far, we've just been seeing MarineKing Prime put the throwdown on White Raw. I'm going to come back into the game and just point out that right now, we see this complete and total position of control for MarineKing Prime. White Raw feels super obligated to keep his whole army in one place, because the instant he splits his army up, this Marine Marauder group will kite him really hard. And like that. MarineKing suddenly gets a huge advantage, picking stuff off, loading back up, dropping or down. And of course, at this point in time, if you're doing this sort of 2 racks play, you transition into this, you can just read your opponent. You've been so broke, you can only just barely afford to get the basic structures up. But that's okay, because you've been pounding his head into the ground. So when you get a read on the situation, you can do something like take a really fast third. You could do something like completely skip out on ghosts. Or you can do something like get into his base, see that he's going for Colossus, and just build 2 more starports and still only have 4 barracks, and just suddenly resurge back into action with a ton of Vikings. Tons of flexibility. And then the instant you see a good kill move, you waltz right up and you go for it. Isn't this annoying? This, in large part, works because MarineKing kept White Raw and, MarineKing Prime kept White Raw so low on units throughout the game. And there's the good game. Now, I want to come back and just point out something in terms of timing. This is when our concussive shell just finished. And then we started our combat shield. I'm going to skip ahead to 8 minutes. We just now start stim. And remember this factory? We built it pretty much when we had money to. And here comes down the starport as well. You're noticing that this stim upgrade is finishing suspiciously close to when our medevacs are going to pop out. And that is completely intentional. See, here's the stim, and... oh! You see how they exactly... whoa, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, damn it, all the hell. I skipped ahead. Clicking the wrong button. Alright. The point I'm trying to make is that this stim finishes right in line with our medevacs popping out. So all that crazy drop aggression that we want to do, we're literally getting all our upgrades as fast as humanly possible, and incidentally, that syncs up perfectly for when we want to do these sorts of drop things. So nice. So indeed, as I come back here to the 6-minute mark, I can say very confidently that this combat shield, this very fast upgrade here, this is one of the big reasons that this build is coming back into play. As I was saying last time, oh, this very fast command center was what everyone used to do, but if you do that, suddenly you have no way to exploit how awfully out of position your Protoss opponent is. At this point in time, with all the trading that's been going on, our Protoss player does not have that many units. He's still pretty even with us in terms of supply, but his tech has been really delayed. He doesn't have stim, or excuse me, he doesn't have blink, he doesn't have charge, he doesn't have any of his upgrades, and we have stim. So this becomes all the more effective. Pretty sweet, right? And I really enjoy this kind of style of play as Terran, because I generally like attacking. Attacking is a great way to get a little bit more information out of your opponent. So I'm going to go ahead and go to another game where we're going to see this sort of 2 racks play. It's between Vile Illusion and In Control. It's going to look a little bit different. What we're going to see is, again, it's on ESV Cloud Kingdom, and these positions are so far away. The natural expansion has some of this openness to it. It's not as open as before. Vile Illusion, I'm going to go ahead and build the barracks. Dum-ba-dum. Build the refinery. Let's go through the build together. Orbital command and a marine. Here comes another barracks. In Control, it does this gas steal a lot. I don't actually think that this is either good or bad. It's like stylistic. This is another way of saying, ha, you can't get cloaked banshees against me. I never have to worry about it again. But it does make you slightly weaker versus these sorts of things. But, you know, In Control is basically looking at the map saying, well, the distances are far. Even if you do try to do some sort of attack against me, I'm going to count on that to help make up for it. So, totally sound logic from a Protoss point of view. But hey, look, there's our supply depot going down after all this fun shenaniganry. Where's our first Marine? Is he all the way out into the middle of the map? No, where is he? Oh, he's actually just shooting the simulator. Again, feel free to be a little bit bold with this first Marine. Around 4 minutes and 10 seconds is when he needs to go ahead and head home. Speeding things along, we see that In Control is doing a 1-gate expand. He's getting sentry up. There is a Stalker, but it's cross-map right now. In Control getting his second assimilator up. Oh, look! In Control now knows that this is coming. He knows exactly what it is that he's going to be up against. For the record, if you build that first assimilator and there's only one Marine attacking it, that can often be a giveaway to this sort of strategy, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. So, at this point in time, Illusion gets Stim instead of Combat Shield. You'll see a couple of times why in this game I'm not the biggest fan of getting this upgrade. Combat Shield will finish by 8 minutes. This is going to end up finishing up by 9 minutes. I think that for the aggression that you kind of have to end up doing with the 2 racks opening, I think that the Combat Shield is going to be a little bit better. If you're going Stim or Combat Shield versus Combat Shield or Stim, they're still both going to be done at the same time. It doesn't matter which one you get first or whatnot. A very common thing to do with these sorts of plays is to just bring along 2 bunkers. I'd like to note that this attack is good because it lets the medevac follow-up be good. It is not good because we're getting our expansion up fast. Therefore, this sort of bunker play, I think, is great. It didn't slow down this upgrade, that would be bad. It's slowing down our command center, which is not really that bad for this build. So I think this is awesome. So we see In Control has a different composition. In Control has a little bit more patience than we saw White Ra have in the last game, and gets a pretty good angle, picking off a lot of those Marauders right off the bat. But the one thing, of course, that you need to worry about is that virtually no matter what 1-gate expand you end up doing, this is still a real danger. We see 11 workers killed off, but In Control stopped this one cold much earlier. And what's been going on back in the base? Well, Jesus, Jeff held that off with 1 gate. Okay, well that's that's actually really impressive. Holy shit. 1 gate expanded, had 1 gate, and it was fine against 2 barracks being built. Unfortunately, did lose quite a lot of probes. But at this point in time, we would be nearing completion with our upgrade for our Marines. And if Illusion kept the pressure up with these Marines, he'd actually be able to continue evading. Or invading. He'd be able to continue applying that sort of pressure. Look at this factory already getting close to being done. And meanwhile, In Control's just started a robotics facility. And perhaps I should stop saying In Control, because I want to, more importantly, say a Protoss will really only just be able to start building whatever sort of tech structure they have after they get a decent amount of units up. So we see the Stim finishing up for Vile Illusion. He's going to be getting Combat Shield soon. He's getting all the things that MarineKing Prime did in effectively the same order, with this being a little bit more delayed. Really want to see that one finish up. But the reason I really don't like Stim so much is this is not a very big force, 4 sentries and 2 stalkers. If you try to do some sort of Stim like this, any reasonable Protoss is going to cut you up with force fields. And there's going to be a good portion of units behind there that aren't able to do anything. Hilariously enough, the worst part of all is when you Stim, like right now, and the Protoss immediately walls off, and all these units never get to fire while Stimmed. Ever. I'm of the opinion that Combat Shield Marines without Stim are strictly better than Stim Marines without Combat Shield. The only exception to that, I think, is if you have Stim no combat shield, and medevacs. So first attack that we saw Vile Illusion do looked pretty good. It was a pretty good looking attack. That second attack was not so good looking. In that unit station we see In Control started to catch up. But look at this, Protoss only just now getting to start that robotics facility. Still a little bit behind on the assimilator. And what do we see? Oh my goodness, Starport medevacs are popping out right now. A little bit of a misstep again to skip out on that combat shield. But what were we saying beforehand? If you're Protoss and you have almost no units, when this drop starts coming in, it's so difficult to actually get a good read on what you should be, how you should be splitting up your units. And there's actually almost no good way to split up your units. Lands right before the Colossus pops in. This does some solid damage. In Control, we're seeing do a very similar look to what happened with White Rot, where all these units have to pull back. They can't quite get into a good position at once. Target fire does go down. I think MarineKing Prime's instinct to pick off pylons is a smarter one. Just because it's much more reliable. You always get to do some damage. And now we see Vile Illusion just lifts up and pulls away. And that was a very successful looking attack. What were we talking about beforehand? Well, if you get into your opponent's base and you get a good read as to what's up, well, sweet. I'm just going to immediately start making Vikings. He only really has one Colossus out. Maybe he'll have two in a second. No big deal. I can just build a second starport. Oh, look at that. Do we have any engineering bays? Well, no, we don't really have one yet. It looks like we opted for a faster fourth barracks instead. And we still can just sort of glance, look at what's going on in the opponent's base, and just keep it up. These small forces can be quite potent. Now we're seeing the Protoss player kind of splitting up his forces a little bit. But even then, look in the unit station. 3 Stalkers, 4 Zealots, an Immortal Colossus, and some Sentries. All the Stalkers at the back of the base. Everything else at the front of the base. Except for 1 Sentry that I can't find. No, there is 2 Sentries. Alright, sweet. Yeah, this is all the rest of everything else. And we're seeing Illusion doing a great job of just getting things out of position. And alas, looks like he's not quite able to do the damage that he wants, but the real damage is happening back home at the buildings. And holy crap, that's actually how I want to state it. The real damage that you do with this build is the fact that your buildings at home are so much farther ahead than his buildings back at his home. At his terrible little Protoss encampment. In this game, we do end up seeing Vile Illusion rapidly build up a huge force of Vikings, easily able to take out all those Colossi. I want to pop into another game, again between Vile Illusion and EG In Control, where we see, instead of the very, very easily deflected, the very, very easy to slip in 2 racks, I want to show what can go wrong a little bit with the 2 racks. And of course, if you're Protoss and you're thinking, well shit, this looks unstoppable, you just keep watching. In Control is going to sort of deflect it kind of easily. So what we've been talking about at this sort of high theoretical level is that this build's goal is to mess with a player who early expands. It can kill a player who early expands, but its goal is rather to mess with him a lot, to force him to build lots of Stalkers, specifically, and that will delay the Protoss tech. That's the goal of this. The obvious follow-up question is, well, what if he doesn't do that? What if he does not go for this early expand? That's what this game's for. So In Control is going for a 3-gate play. Looks like he popped into the base, saw this, is going to be opening up 3 gateways. Stalker poking out, Sentry back home, Zealot at the Watchtower, pretty typical jazz. We still end up pushing out. A little bit of a late push out, we have 2 Marauders. We are getting stim instantly, still I'm a fan of Combat Shield. But let's look at how In Control responds to this. He's getting a robotics facility up right away. And I want you to just close your eyes and think, what is the purpose of this? This is something that can be really bad or great if done properly. And of course, In Control is going to do it properly here. This is really bad if you start really messing up Immortals or something like that. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. If you try to do something like suddenly start going Immortal plus a lot of units, thinking, oh my gosh, I have to hold this off. That's actually very tricky to pull off correctly. But In Control is basically going to be getting this early robotics facility to get a very early robotics bay, so we can begin amassing a lot of Colossi early. So we saw Illusion waltz up here. He's just waltzing home. Cool. There you go. There you frickin' go. Yet another reason why I really like Combat Shield. If your opponent goes for this sort of 3 Warp Gate play, or in other words, doesn't get an early expand, you can just wait till Combat Shield's done, go in for another swing, and if he is expanding, you're still going to be doing a good chunk of damage. Everything else otherwise, from Illusion's point of view, is kind of the same. Now, I do want to pause here for a moment and notice the similarity of this situation with the last 2 games that we've seen. What is the real strength of this build? Well, I talked about the buildings being at home. Let's talk about tactics. The real strength of a 2 racks play is that with this attack, the follow-up to fast medevacs, really good. Why was it good before? Because he was forced to make so many units at the start that he doesn't really have any tech. So he's going to be kind of low on units when we move in. If he one bases it and doesn't expand, even though we have done no damage, he's still going to have a fairly low unit count. If he early expands, you do lots of damage, and then the drop follow-up is strong. If he doesn't early expand, you can still do the drop follow-up, and it's still pretty strong. Nexus plopping down. A nice little pressure attempt by In Control. He's going to poke up here. Always a good idea to do with Protoss, because the sentries can just force field. And oh hey, that's right. Very fast robotics bay. I'm almost comfortable saying that building this Robo Bay a little before you build the Nexus is also really solid. In Control built 3 more sentries to do this pressure. I don't know if I like pressure more than I like fast Colossus, so I figured I'd just throw out both and let you choose whatever you want for your style. But we're seeing Vile Illusion. He has Stim. He should be starting Combat Shield. Where's the Combat Shield? And once again, we're getting pretty damn fast medevacs. There's the Combat Shield popping down. And we move right on out. So this has been not one of these early openings that was super duper easy for us to deal a lot of damage to our opponent. In Control, though, is still going to have a little bit of this splitting problem because we have a good amount of units cropping up pretty quickly. The offensive factory to get into these good spots is also pretty key. And even these sorts of frontal assaults can be very good as long as you control your stuff extremely carefully. All this stuff should be in a medevac somewhere. This little bit of miscontrol that happened right here is the exact reason why this kind of style of play is tricky. So again, just to show out some of those little micro-control errors that happen. First of all, Combat Shield is not done when we begin the battle, so that means that these Marines start off with way lower health. So this battle begins. Targeting the Colossus down is helpful, but only really if your Marauders are getting pretty close. What's often great to do here is just to load up and pull back. Like right here, this sprint up to kill this Colossus, I'm going to be honest, in this whole math, if we deselect the Marines, deselect the Marauders, and pull the Colossus out, we still have 5 Sentries, 3 Stalkers, and 5 Zealots. That's probably going to be enough to clean us up. In these small numbers, where it's kind of iffy, if you just pull up and then retreat, a drop at the back is suddenly going to be really strong, because he just doesn't have enough units to split himself up properly. These units are also not really firing that much, because they're still trying to target fire the Colossus. And even here, pulling these guys up and pulling back. These duders could have been potentially save. A little bit of misarrangement. But still not particularly horrendous by any means. This low count of units from our Protoss opponent is still true. So we can still do these sorts of things a little bit more effectively. We still have the ability to skew our tech really hard because we are engaging his army in a super direct way. Also back home, there's still somewhat of this effect of that he doesn't have as many tech structures. He basically has 4 gates and Robotech done. And his forges are quite delayed. Ordinarily, players can get those up a little faster if you're early expanding. And hey, look at this. Small little play is what this is all about. And that's pretty much all I want to show. In Control is going to end up doing some huge engagements to get him some huge leads in the mid-game. And then it's just sort of like a goofy game after there. I just figured I'd let you know because a lot of people want to know. It's sc2rep.net. There's a .com and a .net, and I use both those for my replays. And of course Husky, who just sends me a lot of his good reps. But we're seeing yet again here that illusions, or I should say the strength of 2 racks is not so much that you're killing him with the first attack. It's the first attack shapes what's going on in the Protoss base to make those follow-up drops strong. But you have to make sure that you're doing the mad aggression. Dat aggression. I'm going to go to a break. Break time with day 9. And then we're going to look at one more goofy game. One more doofy, goofy, derpy, derpy, derpy game.